You'd actually be beautiful if you just lost some weight. That sentence lived in my head for far too long. It echoed in my dreams, whispered through my thoughts while I shopped for clothes, taunted me as I stepped onto the scale, and greeted me in every mirror. But what made it worse, what made it burn into my bones, was who said it. Daniel. The man I loved. The man who said he loved me. My name is Tasha. And for 5 years I stayed in a relationship that slowly poisoned the way I saw myself. I wasn't born insecure. I didn't come into this world doubting my worth or my beauty. But when you hand your heart to the wrong person, they don't always hold it gently. Some people don't just break it, they crush it slowly until you don't even recognize your own reflection. I met Daniel at a friend's engagement party. He was magnetic. That kind of man who didn't need to try too hard. Everything about him screamed confidence. How he walked, how he smiled, how he looked at you like you were the only person in the room. When he approached me, I didn't believe it at first. He was the kind of man women whispered about. Handsome. Articulate. And there I was, standing in my black cocktail dress, trying to hide my arms and not draw too much attention to my body. But he noticed me anyway. Complimented my eyes. Told me I had a beautiful laugh. Asked for my number like I was some rare gem he was lucky to find. Felt like a dream. For the first time in a long time I felt seen. The beginning was magic. He texted good morning and called every night. He planned thoughtful dates, held my hand like it meant something, and looked at me like I was art. I fell fast. Too fast. But how could I not? He made me feel special, at first. Then slowly things shifted. He started suggesting I wear darker colors. They're more slimming, he'd say casually. At first it felt like advice. Then it turned into rules. No sleeveless tops. No short dresses. No eating out without ordering a salad. You don't want to ruin the progress, he'd smile. Progress. Like I was a project under construction. Like my value was being measured in inches and pounds. He said it was love. That he just wanted me to look my best. That he cared enough to tell me the truth when others wouldn't. And I believed him. Because I loved him. Because when someone you adore makes you feel like you're not quite enough, you start wondering if maybe they're right. So I stopped wearing what I liked. I stopped dancing in the mirror. I stopped eating carbs after 6. I even stopped laughing too loudly. He said it drew attention. I became smaller in every sense of the word. I disappeared a little more every day. And yet it was never enough. Why can't you try harder? You looked better when we first met. Other men take pride in their girlfriends. I just wish I could say the same. These weren't red flags anymore. They were entire blood-red walls, and I was trapped behind them. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my mom. I just smiled for pictures and posted happy captions on Instagram, pretending I wasn't crumbling inside. Until one night shattered the illusion. It was a dinner party. Daniel had been invited to his boss's house and he brought me along. His accessory, his arm candy, his +1. I wore a long black dress. He picked it out. Said it hid the problem areas. I laughed like it was a joke even though it felt like a slap. At dinner he introduced me as Tasha. She's working on herself. Laughter followed. I smiled barely. My heart dropped into my stomach. Later, while everyone was chatting over dessert, I heard him say it. To a group of his friends. About me. She's cute, but imagine how stunning she'd be if she dropped 30 more pounds. They all laughed. I didn't. That night I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. A woman who had let someone else define her worth. A woman who had spent years starving for approval and calling it love. And for the first time in years I didn't cry. I woke up the next morning, looked Daniel in the eye and smiled. Because I knew I was done. This wasn't going to be a breakup. This was going to be a comeback. What happened next? Let's just say, he told me to lose weight. So I did. But the weight I dropped wasn't just physical. It was 180 pounds of emotional trash. And it started with him. Keep listening. Because this story is only beginning, and you won't believe how far I went to take back my life. Leaving Daniel wasn't as simple as packing a bag and walking out the door. Not because I still loved him. No, that love had withered long ago under the weight of his constant criticism. But because when you've been manipulated and made to feel worthless for years, your confidence doesn't grow back overnight. Your legs tremble even as you take the first step toward freedom. Your mind plays tricks, whispering, what if he was right? What if no one else will ever want you? What if you're nothing without him? But I left anyway. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't even argue. I just waited until he left for work and I walked out of our apartment with nothing but a backpack in my silence. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to explain myself to the man who spent years tearing me down and calling it honesty. I moved in with my cousin Mia, who had always sensed something was wrong but never pushed. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, eyes tired and heart empty, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug that I didn't realize I needed until that moment. The first few weeks were rough. Without Daniel's constant commentary, I was left alone with my own thoughts, and they weren't kind. I looked in the mirror and still saw every flaw he ever pointed out. My arms. My thighs. My stomach. His words echoed louder now that I was free of him. You're too big for anyone else. No one will ever want you like this. You're lucky I put up with you. But as the silence settled in, something inside me began to shift. I realized I wasn't mourning a lost love. I was detoxing from emotional abuse. And every day without him was like peeling off a layer of lies that had been wrapped around me for years. Mia encouraged me to take care of myself. Not to lose weight, but to heal. She invited me on walks. Cooked meals with me. Played loud music and danced around the kitchen like we were 10 years old again. For the first time in years, I laughed without looking over my shoulder. I breathed without waiting for judgment. And then one night I saw a photo of myself on her fridge. It was from years ago, before Daniel. I was smiling wide, my cheeks flushed, arms open in mid-dance. I didn't look skinny, but I looked alive. That night I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to lose weight to be lovable. I was going to lose everything that made me hate myself, including the voice in my head that sounded like his. I started small. Walking every morning. Drinking water. Journaling every night. I unfollowed toxic pages, muted comparison traps, and stopped trying to punish my body into changing. I started thanking it for surviving. For carrying me even when I wanted to give up. And slowly something beautiful happened. The pounds started falling off, yes. But that wasn't the best part. What fell off with them was the shame. The fear. The belief that I was unworthy of love unless I looked a certain way. I started buying clothes that made me feel powerful, not just smaller. I took selfies not for validation, but because I liked who I was becoming. I saw muscles I never knew I had. I ran a full mile without stopping. I looked in the mirror one morning and smiled, genuinely, for the first time in years. And just when I thought I'd finally erased every trace of him from my life, he came back. Daniel sent a message. Just a casual, "Hey, how've you been?" Like he hadn't crushed my spirit and lit the pieces on fire. I didn't respond. But then he followed up with a picture of us from 2 years ago and a message that made my stomach twist. "You were always beautiful. I miss you. Let's talk." Beautiful? No. He didn't call me beautiful when I was sobbing quietly next to him on the couch. He didn't say I was beautiful when I begged him to stop pointing out my flaws. He didn't say it when I stood there in the dress he chose, humiliated in front of his friends. But now that I had reclaimed myself, now that I was glowing and thriving, now he remembered. That's the thing about men like Daniel. They don't miss you. They miss the power they had over you. They miss the version of you who stayed small so they could feel big. And I was no longer that woman. I looked at his message, shook my head and smiled. Not because I missed him, but because I didn't. Not even a little bit. I had already lost 180 pounds of dead weight. And no matter what sweet words he strung together, I was never picking that trash back up. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about rising. And I was only getting started. You think that's satisfying? Wait until you see what I did next. Because Daniel didn't just try to slither his way back in. He tried to ruin everything I'd built. And that was the biggest mistake of his life. Daniel couldn't stand being ignored. The more I didn't reply, the harder he tried. Sweet texts turned into guilt trips. Then came the fake apologies. He told me he'd changed, that he had gone to therapy, that he missed the real me. The irony? He didn't even know who the real me was. He'd spent years trying to erase her. And now that woman, the one he tried to silence, was finally speaking. I stayed quiet. But he didn't. He started messaging Mia. He showed up at places I posted about online. He'd casually appear at my gym, pretending it was a coincidence, though he'd never set foot in that building before. He even messaged one of my coworkers on Instagram asking about me, saying he was worried. Where was this concern when I cried myself to sleep in the bathroom, praying for peace? Where was this kindness when I begged him to stop making jokes about my body in public? The worst part came when he couldn't get my attention directly. So he tried to sabotage me. I had just started building a fitness page. It was something I never thought I'd do, share my journey online. But after so much pain, I felt called to speak. Not to show off my body, but to show others that healing was possible. That you didn't need someone else's approval to start over. That weight loss wasn't the goal, self-worth was. I posted about my experience anonymously at first. No names. Just the truth. And it resonated. The comments flooded in from people who had been through the same thing. Women, men, teens. I was finally doing something meaningful, and it felt powerful. Until one day someone left a nasty comment. She's lying. I know who this is. She was always dramatic and insecure. Don't believe a word she says. The account had no name. No profile picture. But I knew the voice. It was him. Daniel was trying to discredit me. The moment he realized I wasn't coming back, he tried to destroy what I was building. He started leaving comments on multiple posts, hinting at private details only he would know. He wanted to silence me again, this time not with his words in my ear, but with his poison in my public space. I felt the old panic rise. That urge to shrink. To hide. To run. But I didn't. I screenshot everything. Every comment. Every message. Every attempt to discredit me. And then I made a video. Not to expose him, but to speak my truth. I told my story raw and unfiltered. I spoke about emotional abuse, body shaming, gaslighting, and the way toxic partners don't just break your heart, they break your identity. I never said his name. I didn't need to. The truth didn't need to shout to be heard. The video went viral. Thousands of shares. Tens of thousands of comments. People from all over the world began telling their stories. The platform that Daniel tried to destroy became the exact place where I found community, strength, and purpose. But that wasn't the end. Because while I was moving on and rising higher, Daniel wasn't done falling. A mutual friend, someone who had watched quietly for years, reached out and told me the truth. Daniel had been fired from his job. Apparently, his anger issues had spilled into the workplace. He'd lashed out at coworkers, blamed others for his mistakes, and eventually crossed the line with the wrong person. HR had complaints. Emails had been saved. Screenshots provided. It wasn't just karma. It was the universe setting the scales right. He lost his position, his reputation, and the very power he had once used to belittle me. And just like that, the man who told me I was nothing without him became nothing without the control he held over others. He still tried to play the victim. Still sent me messages about everything falling apart, and how no one understands him. He begged me to meet. To talk. To hear him out one last time. But I didn't respond. Why would I? I was no longer the girl who begged for scraps of affection. I wasn't the woman hiding behind long sleeves and forced smiles. I was me. Fully. Fiercely. Finally. And Daniel? He was just a chapter one had outgrown. But that chapter wasn't closed just yet. Because there was one last encounter left. And when it came, I didn't just walk away. I walked through him, and showed him exactly what healing looks like when it comes with receipts. It happened on a Saturday. I was invited to speak at a local women's empowerment seminar. Small gathering, community-led, nothing fancy. The theme was healing after emotional trauma, and someone from the event team had come across my video online. They reached out, asked if I'd share my story in person. I said yes, not because I thought of myself as some big speaker, but because deep down I knew someone in that room might still be where I once was. Silent, ashamed, and stuck. Mia came with me. She sat in the front row, her eyes brimming with quiet pride as I stepped up to the mic. My palms were sweaty, but my voice was steady. I shared everything. The relationship, the slow erasure of my identity, the humiliation, the rebuilding. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't villainize. I just told the truth. And by the end I saw it in their eyes, the recognition. The women who nodded. The ones who wiped away silent tears. The one who whispered thank you when I walked past her after. And then just when I thought the day couldn't get more surreal, I saw him. Daniel. Standing near the back of the room, wearing that same smug look he always wore when he was pretending not to care. He clapped along with everyone else, slow, deliberate, like he owned the air in the room. For a split second I felt it, that punch of fear in the gut, the old habit of shrinking. But then I remembered, I wasn't that woman anymore. He came up after the event like nothing had happened between us. Like he hadn't tried to shatter my self-worth and then sabotage my peace when I got away. He smiled that familiar smile and said, "You looked powerful up there. I guess I underestimated you." It wasn't a compliment. It was a power play. I didn't flinch. "Underestimating me was your specialty," I said calmly. He shifted, eyes scanning me the way he used to, looking for weakness. For some small twitch in my expression, some soft spot he could press on. But there was none left. "I've changed," he said. "I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I want to make things right." "Did you reflect when you were trying to ruin my reputation online?" I asked, meeting his eyes without blinking. "Or when you laughed at me in front of your friends?" He swallowed. "You don't have to keep punishing me," he muttered. "I've suffered enough." And there was the final act. The man who once delighted in tearing me down now playing the victim because he didn't like the view from the bottom. I leaned in just slightly, not out of anger, but with the peace of someone who had nothing left to prove. "This isn't punishment, Daniel. It's distance. And it's permanent." He stared at me, waiting for something. Tears, regret, softness. But I gave him none of it. Just the truth. "You were right about one thing," I added. "I did need to lose weight. But the part one really needed to lose was you." With that I walked away. And I didn't look back. What I didn't know then, though, was that Daniel still had one more bitter card to play. He couldn't stand the fact that I was doing better without him. So he tried one last time to get under my skin. Publicly. And this time he crossed a line that changed everything. He went live. Not just a cryptic post. Not another fake account leaving shady comments. This time Daniel took it to a new level. A live video on his personal social media page. Over 5,000 followers, mostly people we knew, mutual friends, coworkers from his old job, even family. I didn't see it when it first happened. My phone started buzzing non-stop. Texts. Mentions. DMs. Some asking if I was okay. Some just sending me the link. The option. The truth about Tasha. First I froze. Then I opened it. There he was, Daniel, sitting in his car looking calm, collected, and every bit the manipulator I remembered. He spoke slowly, deliberately, like a man who had rehearsed every line in front of a mirror. "I've kept quiet for a long time," he began, "but I think it's time people hear my side." He painted himself as the victim. Claimed I was emotionally unstable, obsessed with revenge, and fabricating stories to gain followers. He said our relationship ended because I was too sensitive, that I twisted his words, and that the things I shared online were out of context. He even implied that I was the one who mistreated him. "I never told her she was ugly," he said, all wide-eyed and innocent. "I encouraged her to be her best self. She just didn't want to hear the truth." And then, like the coward he was, he ended it with, "I hope she gets help." That line sent rage rushing through my chest. Not because I was surprised, but because I knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to gaslight me publicly. Make me doubt myself. Make others doubt me. Drag me back into the shadows where his words were the only ones that mattered. But he forgot one thing. This time I had proof. I had screenshots. Voice notes. Texts. Old emails. I never intended to use them. I wasn't out for public vengeance. I didn't need to ruin his name to reclaim mine. But when someone comes for your truth and tries to burn down what you've built, you don't sit quietly and watch it happen. So I responded. Not with drama. Not with threats. But with the same weapon he underestimated the first time. The truth. I posted a video. Not emotional. Not angry. Just clear. I showed the messages where he mocked my body. The audio where he called me lucky I wasn't single. The screenshots of him trying to discredit me under fake names. I blurred out anything unnecessary, protected identities. But I let his words speak for themselves. And I ended with this. I don't need to defend myself with lies. I've lived the truth. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclaiming the voice I lost for years. I'm not ashamed of who I used to be, because she got me here. Stronger. Healthier. And finally free. The video blew up. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. People began calling him out. Those who once doubted me apologized. And others, women I didn't even know, began sharing their own screenshots. Their own voice notes. Their own horror stories involving Daniel. Turns out I wasn't the only one. His fake mask fell fast after that. Whatever sympathy he had left vanished. His page went dark. He deleted the live. But it was too late. The damage was done, but not to me. To him. I didn't feel joy watching him fall. I felt relief. Not because he was finally being exposed, but because I knew I'd never have to explain myself again. Not to anyone. Not ever. I had faced the worst of it. The shame, the self-loathing, the fear, and I'd come out on the other side with something no one could take from me again. My voice. My strength. And my peace. But before this story ends, there's one final part you need to hear. Because it wasn't just about Daniel's downfall. It was about the woman I became after the storm cleared. After the dust settled, something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without his voice poisoning them. I no longer looked in the mirror and saw someone who needed fixing. I saw me, the version of myself that had been buried under years of criticism, gaslighting, and emotional bruises disguised as concern. But healing didn't just stop with clearing his name out of my life. It went deeper. I went back to school. I pursued that nutrition certification I always put off because he said it was a waste of time. I joined a women's wellness group, began public speaking, and started coaching others who felt unseen in their own stories. And as for my body, I didn't just lose 180 pounds of dead weight. I found a new relationship with myself. I worked out because I loved my body, not because I hated it. I stopped eating guilt. I stopped dressing to shrink. I stopped living for approval. One day, while at a panel event for survivors of emotional abuse, a woman walked up to me after I spoke. She had tears in her eyes. She whispered, "You just told my story." That's when I realized, this was bigger than me. My story had turned into something powerful. A light for others stuck in the darkness I once called home. And Karma? Oh, Karma took her time with Daniel, but when she showed up, she did it loudly. Turns out, one of the women he had mentored came forward with evidence of harassment. Multiple women followed. His fake charm and twisted apologies couldn't save him anymore. He lost his job. His sponsorship deals dropped him. His influencer accounts shadow banned and ghosted. No one wanted to be associated with a man who built his image by tearing women down. He tried to spin it. He tried to play the victim. But this time nobody was listening. He faded. And I flourished. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to remove him, and once I did, everything I thought I was missing found its way to me. Love, peace, success, clarity. Sometimes losing someone is the greatest gift. And to the version of me who once stayed quiet, who cried in silence, who believed she was unworthy, I see you. Honor you. And I thank you, because you got us here. If you've ever been made to feel like you're too much, not enough, or unlovable, hear me now. You are already whole. Don't let someone else define your worth. And don't wait for permission to reclaim your power. If this story touched something in you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's keep telling the stories that set people free. New episodes drop every single day, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.